and he is the General Manager of the Business Development for the Jacksonville Port Authority. He oversees the creation and execution of a strategic business plan to attract new cargo and cruise business through the Jacksonville's seaport. Robert has been a resident of Jacksonville since 1989. Please welcome Robert Peak. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone making do with Zoom. What I want to do is give you a brief overview of the port and an insight into our operations and how we're responding to coronavirus. I have some slides, Patty, if you want to call those up, and I'll go through these kind of quickly because I'd rather hear your questions and know kind of what kind of information that you're looking for. But I think to start with, I think it's helpful to have some slides to just give you a framework for the port and how we're structured. I know many of you probably know some of that, but you might not all know all of it. So I know when Patty calls the slides up, I can I'll kind of go through those. Like I said, I'll go through them fairly quickly, and I'll just cue Patty to advance to the next slide. There we go. So if we'll go to the next slide, please. So just as a starting point, for those of you who don't know, the Jacksonville Port Authority is a local independent government agency, and we do own and manage the public cargo and cruise seaport facilities in Jacksonville. So Florida has 15 seaports. They all have their own local government agency which runs it. Here in Jacksonville, the local government agency is us, Jacksport. We really are kind of a cousin agency or a sister agency to JTA, the Transportation Authority, the Airport Authority, JEA, not unlike. If you'll advance one for me, please. There you go. So we have a 7-member governing board, and 4 of our members are appointed by the Jacksonville mayor, and 3 are appointed by the Florida governor. And these are unpaid volunteer board members. They set policy for the board, for the port, and they meet once a month formally. They hire a CEO, who's Eric Green, who manages the staff for us. So that's just kind of the framework for who we are. If you'll advance, Patty, please. Okay, so we handle both cargo and cruise operations. I'll touch on cruise operations. So this ship you see before you, the Carnival Ecstasy, that is the only cruise ship that is home ported or based in Jacksonville. It's a Carnival Cruise Line ship. It has about 2,056 passengers, and it goes out, or has been going out, on 4-night and 5-night cruises out of Jacksonville. And we've had a Carnival cruise ship here for about 16 years. They swap out the ship every couple of years. We've had the Ecstasy for about 2 years. Now, right now, there is no cruising in the United States. All cruises are shut down. And on Monday, the Center for Disease Control asked that cruises shut down, or required cruises to shut down for another 100 days. So we're not sure when cruises are going to come back and when they do, what it's going to look like. But this is the cruise ship that's based here. In the meantime, we actually have 3 other cruise vessels that are staying here on a temporary basis because their home ports are shut down. So there's no passengers on any of these ships. A lot of the crew have gone home from these ships, but they're just sitting idle at our docks right now, waiting to see what happens post-coronavirus. If and when cruise returns, and depending upon how it returns, we think there's opportunities if we figure out how to do it for additional cruise lines to come to Jacksonville in the long term. Historically, the location of our cruise terminal, which is on what we call the wrong side of the Danes Point Bridge, which is actually on the west side. Cruise ships have to travel beneath that bridge to get to the cruise terminal. And many cruise ships are too big to do that. So we have a bit of a limited market in which ships we can go after, but we think the demographics of the Northeast Florida and Florida have changed sufficiently that we are an attractive market for new cruise lines when this returns. But how fast does the cruise industry come back? What changes are made? Those are all question marks for us. We're well positioned to take advantage of it if and when that happens, but that's kind of to be seen. If you'll advance the slide for me, Patty. Most of our business is on the cargo side, and people always ask how big the port is, and I'll ask you to advance the slide twice. Go ahead and click. So we're actually the largest container port in the state of Florida. And containers are those big 20-foot, 40-foot long boxes you see in the back of trucks and rail cars. If you hit the button one more time for me, advance the slide. So we measure containers in what we call TEUs. These are 20-foot long boxes. And last year we handled 1.3 million TEUs. And you can see how many the other major Florida ports handled. So we're the biggest container port in the state of Florida. If you'll advance one more for me. And we're the 10th largest port in the United States for handling containers. And if you hit it twice more for me, please. We're the second busiest vehicle port in the United States. We handle more vehicles than any port in the United States, imported and exported, other than Port of Baltimore. And we're the #1 U.S. port for handling goods with Puerto Rico. We handle more goods with to and from the island of Puerto Rico than any other port in the world. So this is kind of our rankings, if you will. Patty, if you advance it one more time for me, please. People often ask, do you import or export more cargo? Well, the truth is that our imports and exports are pretty balanced, and this is true year in and year out. For every ton of cargo we import, we just about export a ton of cargo as well. And we like having that balance. It means we are importing some foreign goods, but it means we're exporting American goods and goods out of the country as well. Advance it one more time for me, please. Okay, and if you hit one more, hit it one more. Okay, so in terms of where we trade, every one of those dots on this map, that is where there are ships on a regular basis that sail to and from these ports. They might be carrying containers, they might be carrying cars, they might be carrying other goods, but this is where we have what we call direct vessel service, that ships are coming and going. If you hit the slide one more time for me, and there we go. And anywhere you see a star, that's where that's our top 10, one of our top 10 trading ports. So our #1 trading partner is Puerto Rico, and then it's China, Brazil, Vietnam, Thailand, Japan, South Korea, Costa Rica, Malaysia, and Chile. So we've tried to diversify, and this is a strategy we have to try to diversify where we trade around the world. We have big trading ports in South America, the Caribbean, Asia. Eventually we want to grow into Western Europe. So we really truly are a global port, if you will. If you'll advance it one more time for me, please. One of the reasons that we've been able to grow so successfully is just geographically how we're set up with the nation's rail and road network really tied here. If you look at that map, you see the dark yellow. If you import something into our country, you can reach a consumer within 70 million consumers within a one-day truck drive. And if you look at the kind of the lighter yellow, kind of pinkish, that's a 2-day truck drive. And all the companies that are based there that manufacture in the Southeast and the Midwest, they can reach us very easily too, because we have 3 interstates, Interstate 95, Interstate 10 intersect at our port. Interstate 75 is just west of us. And we have 3 railroads that all use the port here, CSX, Norfolk Southern, and Florida East Coast Railway. So when you have 3 modern railroads, 3 interstates, 70 million people, a major manufacturing base, a modern port, this is really why we've grown so successfully over the years. If you'll advance it one more time for me, Patty, please. In terms of the location of our facilities, we have 5 facilities, all located along the St. Johns River. You see downtown Jacksonville there in the center of your screen. All of our facilities are to the east, northeast of that facility. We have 3 of downtown. We have 3 cargo facilities. We have 1 rail yard, and we have the cruise terminal. You can kind of see the relative location. You see Interstate 295 going over the river. That's the Dames Point Bridge. So you see that we have the Dames Point and Blount Island Marine Terminals on either side of the bridge. We have the Talleyrand Marine Terminal closer to downtown. We have the cruise terminal and the rail yard out there on the north side as well. So those are our facilities that the Port Authority owns. If you'll advance it one more time for me, please. In terms of the kinds of cargo we handle through the port, we handle just about everything under the sun. Those top 3 you see say containers, vehicles, and break bulk. Those 3 kinds of cargoes probably generate over 90–95% of all the kinds of cargo moving through the port. So those containers, the big 20-foot and 40-foot boxes, full of consumer goods and products, that accounts for about half of everything shipped through the port. You see vehicles there. Those are new cars mostly, although we handle used cars. Probably about 15 different automobile manufacturers use our port to import and export cars to the port. And then you see break bulk cargoes. These are cargoes that are not cars, they're not put in containers. They would be things like aluminum and steel and cut lumber and wood pulp, which is what you see in the picture there. And then the lower screen, you see military heavy lift and project cargoes. So we're the only port in Florida that handles military cargoes. We do that fairly regularly. When the U.S. military needs to deploy troops, equipment for troops, tanks, Humvees, water tanks, construction equipment, our commercial cargo facilities become military loading centers. And we both send it out and bring it back. And we ship out a lot of U.S.-based equipment. For example, the 101st Airborne in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, they'll send dozens and dozens of helicopters at a time out of our facilities. So these are commercial cargo facilities that we basically then convert into military cargo operations whenever they need it, whenever the military asks us to or needs it. And then you see heavy lift and project cargo there. These are like specialty cargoes. That heavy lift, that white piece of equipment you see being lifted, that's a railroad locomotive. It's being loaded onto a ship to be taken to Brazil. It was manufactured in the United States. And you see a project cargo on the far right bottom. Those are actually speedboats that are being exported to the Caribbean for a speedboat racing contest. So we handle just about everything under the sun that you can imagine is imported or exported through the port. Patty, if you please advance it one more time for me. So to handle all these operations, both on the cruise and the cargo side, it takes a lot of people. But Jacksport's what's called a landlord port. That means that the Port Authority owns just about we own all the property. We own most of the cranes. We own just about all the warehousing and equipment. But we don't operate it. We lease all of those operations out to private companies, to terminal operating companies, ocean carrier companies, automobile processing companies. So the Jacksonville Port Authority, none of our employees actually touch cargo. We don't load or unload the ships. We don't operate the cranes. We don't drive trucks. We don't operate the warehouses. We don't hire the people who do. Our tenants do that. And so we're kind of a lean agency. We have 150 employees. But there are several thousand people who work at the terminals, and they all work for either directly for our private tenants, or their labor that's hired by the tenants, or their vendors like truck drivers that are hired by the tenants to control the movement of the cargo. If you'll advance the slide one time for me, please. So we had an economic impact study done that showed there was about 26,000 jobs in Northeast Florida that are directly tied to the port. The people who work on the port every day, the warehousing where that cargo ends up. There's about 100 trucking firms that use the port on a regular basis. The longshore labor that use the port. It's a tremendous economic engine for Northeast Florida, and that's really why we do what we do, is to create jobs for the community. If you advance the slide one time. There's two major projects I'll touch on to kind of close it out before we take questions. One of them is our harbor deepening project. This is probably the single most important project we have underway. And what you see is kind of an aerial view of the harbor of Jacksonville. On the far right is the Atlantic Ocean. And there's a project underway. It started about 2 years ago to deepen our harbor from a depth of 40 feet to a depth of 47 feet. And you can see those colored sections. You can see that the project has been broken into sections. And the entire project is 13 miles long. It starts near Mayport there. And the focus we have right now is on those first 3 sections that would take us through the yellow, blue, and red. And that would take us past the Blunt Island Marine Terminal to get that down to 47 feet. And that's what's being undertaken right now. And that project should be completed in 2023, which will be 2 years ahead of our original schedule. And then that green or aqua area, you can see, that is actually the last 2 miles of the project. That has been authorized by Congress. It's gone through all the studies, but we haven't pursued any funding for that. So we have to kind of get through our first 11 miles first and make sure that project gets done, and then we're going to see what we might be able to do for those last 2 miles. So this is probably the single largest and most important project we have underway at the port right now, is to see this project completed. And it's on track. It's not been thrown off because of virus. It remains ahead of schedule, and we look forward to seeing that completed. And advance it one more time for me, please. And then I also want to mention the Jacksonville being a world leader in liquefied natural gas. And I know that a lot of people, they use the word the term world leader a lot, kind of loosely, but this is genuinely true that we're genuinely a world leader. Well, the ship you see in the left-hand side of the screen, that's a ship that was built by a Jacksonville-based company called Tote Maritime, and they built 2 of these vessels, and they are the world's first 2 vessels that carry containers that are powered by liquefied natural gas. LNG is a very abundant energy in the United States, and it's very clean burning. It is clean. It burns much cleaner than traditional maritime fuels. And then the ship you see in the bottom right, that ship was built by Crowley Maritime. They're also based in Jacksonville. They also have built 2 ships powered by liquefied natural gas, and those are the first 2 ships in the world that carry containers and cars that are powered by liquefied natural gas. So we have the first 4 ships in the world of these types that are powered by liquefied natural gas, built by Jacksonville-based companies that are home ported in the port of Jacksonville. And now LNG, as they call it, is really taking off as a maritime fuel, and we're seeing shipping lines all over the world looking to use LNG as a fuel. And there are 2 large LNG companies that have built fueling stations, if you will, in Jacksonville. One in Maxville on the west side, one on Heckscher Drive on the north side, to provide fuel not only for these ships, but for more ships, and also for FEC rail locomotives, for other equipment that needs to run on LNG. There's a pipeline here, so to speak, available for LNG. So we have people coming in from all over the world to view these facilities because they want to stand up similar facilities. And we've hosted people from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Asia, South America, Central America, all over, to see how these facilities are built so they can build them, so these ships have kind of a worldwide network to use. But right now, we're kind of the only gas station, if you will. If you advance it one more time for me. And just a couple of things to wrap up, and then I'll start answering some of these questions. Last week when we were finalizing arrangements for today, Vicki Lynn had asked if our plans had changed much from a few months ago due to the virus. And I gave an interview to the Florida Times Union, which I think was in the paper today, and they asked me the same thing. And the short answer is, we've made some operational changes. Our long-term plans have not changed, but operationally, we're focused on things we can do to keep employees healthy. And that's things like all of our administrative employees are working from home. So I'm working from home. We've closed our administrative offices to visitors. We're doing a temperature scan for every employee comes in. We're segregating our day and night shifts. We daily disinfect all the equipment and vehicles that are used by workers. So we're doing everything we can to keep employees safe. And so that's what's changed for the short term. But long term, really, the plans have not changed. The port remains open. Our terminals remain open. The ships are coming in and out. The one thing that's changed is the amount of volume on the ships has been reduced, and it probably will be reduced until our volumes start returning to some sense of normalcy. So we have less cargo on board because people are staying at home and stores are closed and whatnot. But when the economy opens up, that's when I think we'll see our volumes return. And the port's going to stay open because not only is it a large employer, but we're really a vital piece of the supply chain to get goods into stores. One of the big things we handle is medical supplies. So a lot of those are coming through the port. We handle a lot of food products as well. And we continue to be an asset for American manufacturers who need to export their products overseas. So I think the port will remain open. It's a large and vital economic engine for Northeast Florida. And I think will continue to be so long after whatever the new normal turns into, in this kind of post-virus world. So given that, what I'd like to do is answer some of the questions that have come in. And I'm going to read them for you, and then I'll answer them. So one of them was, let's see, how does Jacksonville compare in size to Savannah and Charleston? Great question. Savannah's the biggest, Charleston's in the middle, and then we would be third. So we're the 10th largest container port in the United States, but Charleston and Savannah are inside the top 10. And they are our biggest competitors. So we operate in a very competitive environment. When companies are choosing to open an operation here or move cargo, they can choose just about any port. And so we rely very heavily on our logistics advantages, the rail network, the highway network, our workforce, our port facilities. and to attract those cargoes here. And we've set a record the last 4 years, the amount of cargo we've moved through the port, the number of containers we've moved through the port, the amount of automobiles we moved through the port was a record last year. So we're really growing. Now the virus has thrown a wrench into that, certainly short term, but right now, right now we're holding our own in terms of being very competitive. The next question is, what's the status of the capsized auto transport ship removal at Brunswick? What are the lessons learned from the incident? So for those of you who don't know or don't remember, there was an automobile ship that was carrying several thousand cars that was leaving the harbor in Brunswick, and it literally tipped over in the channel. And the harbor pilot who was piloting was very, very skilled and very smart. He kind of scooted the ship over to the side. So when the ship tipped over, when he realized it was going to tip over, it was able to tip over and not block the channel. So Brunswick's channel has remained open. Typically, to remove a ship like that probably would take about a year to get all the cargo out the ship. I know they've gotten all the fuel off the ship, and the last I heard, they were just debating whether if they could right the ship or dismantle it. But I know when the Costa Concordia cruise ship in Italy capsized, I think that took a couple of years to get that ship right-sized. So that's a real long-term project. In terms of lessons learned, I'm sure there's going to be a number of investigations to determine why that ship tipped over. And those typically take a year or more as well. So those are, I'm sure, underway but haven't been completed yet. But and I can only speculate to what caused that ship to tip over. I'm going to guess it was a ballast issue. Ballast is when they pump water into the ship to balance it based upon where the cargo is at. And I'm going to guess it was a ballast issue, because the ship loaded fine, but as soon as it sailed away from the dock, it basically tipped over. So I'm guessing that's what the issue was, but I'm speculating. I have a couple more questions here. What products are regularly exported to our principal trading countries like China, Brazil, etc.? Okay, so we pretty much import and export a ton. We import a lot of consumer products. So when you walk into a Walmart or a Target, a Home Depot, a Lowe's, any big box store, you're probably buying things that were imported through a port. What Americans send overseas is we send some raw materials like steel and lumber, but we send a lot of finished products that are high quality. That's what America is known for, is really high quality production of things like parts. So we send a lot of auto parts. We make a lot of auto parts real well that we send overseas. And variety of products that people overseas, typically the United States has a very good reputation for the quality of materials that are manufactured here, and people are willing to pay a premium for those. But if you were to crack open a container, import or export, you'd find just about any or in an industrial site or shop. And then automobiles are huge, both import and export for us. Like I mentioned, we handle about 15 different automakers, Toyota, Nissan, Ford, GM, Chevy, Mitsubishi, Volkswagen, Porsche, Volvos. They all move through the Port of Jacksonville. Someone's asked, what's the competitive advantage of the port deepening project? So the need for the deepening project is ships are getting bigger and bigger, and there's a need for us to be at a depth of 47 feet. So our biggest competitor is the Port of Savannah. Savannah is deepening its harbor to a depth of 47 feet. Right now, Savannah's at 42 feet, or at 40 feet. And so Savannah's had for years a competitive advantage to us for a harbor depth. When our project is done, which will be about the same time as theirs, we will equalize that competitive disadvantage. And then what will kick in are a lot of the competitive advantages that really swing in our favor. We have much better highway connection than Savannah. We have much better labor force than Savannah. We have much less congestion than Port of Savannah. The distance from our berths to the sea, to the Cebu, to the Atlantic Ocean, is half what it is in Savannah. We have two-way ship traffic here they don't have in Savannah. So we have tremendous advantages over our competitors once we get the harbor deepened. we are the only port in the United States that only has 40 feet of water that handles 1 million containers a year. Any port that doesn't have 40 feet of water, only has 40 feet of water, typically just doesn't handle 1 million containers. The logistics just don't add up, and we're the outlier. And any port that handles 1 million containers a year has a lot more than 40 feet, other than us. And it really speaks to companies want to use us when they can, but we're just not going to get where we need to be in terms of our capabilities and the ability to retain existing business for companies that are shipping through us now that are saying, listen, we're going to be putting our goods on ships that cannot come in at 40 feet. So some of this is to retain existing business and some of it's to attract new business. What's the possibility of moving the cruise terminal to the east side of the bridge and having a great opportunity for attracting larger ships? Yeah, Tom, that's a great question. That's been the white whale, if you will. The Port Authority has been interested in moving the cruise terminal to the other side of the bridge since we started in the cruise business. We just have not found a piece of property that is suitable for cruise operations on the east side of the Danes Point Bridge. And for that reason, we have to stay on the west side of the bridge and make do with what we got. But if we ever find a spot on the east side of the bridge, it's something we'd be very interested in doing. What will the coronavirus impact, what will the economic impact be of continuing cruise ship stoppage? Were there plans in place to expand that portion of the port business? Okay, excellent questions, Jay. So Jay, you asked me 2 questions there. What will the economic impact of continuing cruise ship stoppage? So cruise business represents about 8% of our revenue, and 92% is cargo and cargo related business. So if the cruise business is stopped for a couple of months, we can weather that. If the cruise business were to go away, well, that's an 8% hole in our revenue budget that we'd need to fill. And were there plans in place to expand that portion of the business? Yes, we've wanted to see additional cruise lines come into Jacksonville because we think the demographics set up extremely well for us for cruise lines, given the limited availability of some of the ships that can make it underneath the Danes Point Bridge. So we have to see what the new normal looks like for the cruise business once we're kind of into the new normal past COVID-19 or however we live with COVID-19, and that'll guide us to what we're going to be doing with the cruise business moving forward. But that has been in our long-term plans, yes. So Vicki Lynn, those are all the questions I think that people have sent me. And if we have time, I'm glad to take any additional questions. Oh, here comes another one. This is great. This is like being a talk show host. Is the revenue from the temporarily ported cruise ships somewhat of a boon for the port? Excellent question. Yes. So the cruise ships that are temporarily located here, the Norwegian ships, they're home ported, they've been brought here temporarily kind of to wait out the virus, if you will. Yes, we're charging them to use our docks. So that helps offset the loss that we have from not having the cruise ship come in and out from Carnival. So yes, we charge them, and yes, that's helping us replace some of that 8% cargo revenue.
So I see another question here.
Okay.
It says, do any livestock come through our port?
I have not seen livestock through the port for years and years. It's very unusual. I've seen it years ago, and when livestock moves to the port, they tend to send it, and they may be required now to send it with either a veterinarian or someone with veterinarian skills to tend the livestock while it's on board the ship. And but it's been years since I've seen that. Usually it's cattle. Usually it's cattle being exported, beef cattle being exported. And they used to tell me they take really good care of the cattle on the ship, and then they take it to the slaughterhouse. But no, I've not seen any live animals for years at the port.
Also, there's one other. Have there been any layoffs to employees, and if so, how many?
Yeah, so right now at the Jacksonville Port Authority, we've not laid off any employees. And as I mentioned, we have a whole network of tenants, and there's many tenants, and they all have their own operations and their own businesses. and I'm not aware concretely of who might have laid anyone off. You know, the operations at the port have to continue. So our gates remain open 24/7. The ships are coming in. The longshore workers have to load and unload. The warehouse people have to operate the forklifts. The crane operators have to operate. The truck drivers have to come in, because these goods are part of what we're buying, including medical supplies and food and medicine, and we're exporting out supplies as well. Not necessarily medical supplies right now, but other goods. So there's going to be a continued need for workers to be at the port. If volumes were to drop off considerably and ships, you know, not as many ships came in, then you might start seeing, you know, a downgrade in labor. But right now, we haven't seen it at all. The Port Authority. I don't know if any of our tenants have done it. If the longer this lingers, the increased likelihood for both of those things to happen do exist.
Okay, so I actually have 3 more questions. I'm not sure we're going to have time to get to all of them, but I'm going to give them to you. And if we don't have it, we really only have about a minute or so here.
Sure.
Then maybe we can get the answer in writing. So, and they're on your chat screen. So the best thing would be, I'm going to say them, and then we can get answers in writing from you later.
Okay.
And there is, how has the coronavirus impacted outflows to our South American partners? Is there still demands from them? That was 1, which was actually 2. Then there's, are the containers color coded according to the content? That is our 2nd. And then the last one is, what is the port's human trafficking protocol when stowaways are found? And all of those are good questions. And can I just get those from you in writing?
If you give me 2 minutes, I can answer all of them in 2 minutes.
Go 2 minutes.
How has the coronavirus impacted outflows of South American partners? We still are shipping. Volumes are depressed a little bit globally, but we're still exporting. Yes, there's still demand. Are the containers color-coded according to contents? No, they're not. Each container has a unique number, almost like a barcode, but it's not color-coded. What's the port's human trafficking protocol when stowaways are found? That's a function of the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Customs. So we step out of the picture. We rarely have stowaways. It's very uncommon. But when that happens, it's a federal issue, literally, and the feds swoop in and deal with that. But it's not something the port does. But it's an uncommon thing, very uncommon thing to happen.
Robert, that was an excellent presentation. I really do appreciate you being here and sharing with us today. Thank you so very much. Just a couple of things before we ring the bell, Patty. This past week, I reached out and spent a lot of time talking to some of our members. And one of the great outcomes of that was I was talking to Rob Sly, who's in the banking industry. And with all the stimulus money, he's super, super busy. And he said to me, what do you think about a guest speaker that could talk about the process for the small business loans? And so next week, our guest speaker is Jessica Evans. She's the Senior Vice President for Commercial Banking at Regions, and she'll be going over that loan process. And I'd like to ask Alba to remain on, and Yanchi, if you can, for any of those that want to talk to you about how things are in Europe. And then let's end with our motto, service above self. Those who profits most serve the best. Ding, Patty. Gotta unmute it though. Everyone take care. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.